Just how chaotic but satisfying could 7 days of Hypixel Skyblock really be? With mining, farming, and destroying an entire microbiota of mushrooms, I'd say it was a real trip. So welcome to 7 days of Hypixel Skyblock. As day 1 began, I followed the basic rules of Minecraft. Mine and craft. To begin, I only needed to break 1 log to progress, but instead I decided to destroy the entire tree. Now my next task was to make a workbench, but instead of doing that, I decided I was going to punch every single flower that appeared on my island. Once I stopped being a silly goose, I made some planks and then finally made a crafting table. I then followed the instructions at the top of my screen, making planks, then sticks, and then a pickaxe. I also made some wooden slabs to bridge across to Jerry and the weird little cobblestone mining creature called a minion. Now that I'm on the other island, I had a chat with a bloke called Jerry, and Jerry told me about the Skyblock Islands. Your Skyblock Island is part of a much larger universe. The Skyblock universe is full of islands to explore and resources to discover. Use the portal to warp to the first of those islands, the Skyblock hub. I quickly made a stone pickaxe, and then I went to the hub. Holy fuck, there is a lot going on in the hub. Talk to the villagers. I remember this one. This is the one that I struggle with because I never know where all the villagers are. First, I spoke to Duke, who recommended that I begin in the coal mine or in the farming area. Oh, Andy mentioned something about fairy souls, but more on that later when it's actually relevant. Secondly, I spoke to Felix, who told me about the extra storage via the ender chest in my Skyblock menu. Next up, I spoke to Lynn, who explained that I could use the quest log to avoid getting lost while trying to complete quests. While Lynn was speaking, a bat was let off in the hub which drops green candy items, which I ran around and collected. As I was running around and stealing candy, I spoke to Jack, who explained some of the basic stats in the game, such as health, strength, and defense, albeit I didn't read any of it at the time, so the information didn't help me whatsoever. After ignoring Jack, I spoke to Vex, who explained player trading to me. Now, I got given a sword by this villager called Jamie, which I guess was kind of nice. I don't really know what it's for, but hey, I got a free sword. Finally, I found Leo, who explained that I could get a set of armor from the nearby forest by chopping down all of the trees in the area. Now that I've spoken to all the villagers, I decided to introduce myself to Jacob, who told me I need to get farming 10 to participate in farming contests. Well, with a goal in mind, I introduced myself to the farmer, who wanted me to grab 10 wheat for their cow, which I had done earlier while looking for the villagers. As a reward for giving the farmer the wheat they asked for, they gave me access to the barn, a place which we will explore very shortly. But first, before I went to the barn, I sold all my excess wheat and seeds to the farm merchant, who gave me a nice 5,000 coins in my purse. I then went back to the launcher, which would send me to the farm, but instead of going on it, I punched more wheat for no real reason, which leveled me up to farming 6. I thought these skills were going to be hard to level up, but I guess not. Finally, I took the launch pad to the barn. In the barn, you can farm all sorts of things. Wheat, potatoes, carrot, the skins off of cows, you name it, I can farm it all. Now, from what I've just explained, I just completed all of the farmhands quests, which unlock the launch pad to the next farming-related area, the Mushroom Island. The first thing I did on the Mushroom Island is ignore all of the wonderful people in the settlement and run down to the oasis, where I broke a single cocoa bean and a bit of sugarcane, and then I ran back to the main settlement area to break a cactus, and back to the oasis to commit some senseless murder. I then followed the path which led me into the Mushroom Gorge, where I'm going to spend a lot of time early game because it's one of my favourite areas to make money in, even if it's a little bit inefficient. I then went back to the hub and sold all of the crops in my inventory to make space to explore more of Hypixel Skyblock's universe. Before I did any more exploring though, I decided to visit the bank to deposit my money. Because when you die in Hypixel Skyblock, you lose half of your purse. So if I put it into my bank, it's safe from my own stupidity. Next up, I ran to the forest to the left of the village, where I punched some wood for a lumberjack who wanted 10 blocks, and I got my first Skyblock level up. Don't worry, this will be important later. After breaking the logs for the lumberjack, I spoke to him and he gave me an axe, and he also gave me access to the park where I can find a range of different trees to break. When I first arrived on the island, I was in an area of birch trees while being told to break 64 birch logs, so I did that exactly. Now that I've broken all these logs, I needed to speak to Charlie, who asked me now to bring him some dark oak logs. Well, I'm not one to deny someone their logs, so I went up and started breaking some. But then I ran into a little cult who'd set themselves up on the dark oak layer. Thinking it was strange, I spoke to their leader, who told me to jump into the campfire for a reward. While I'm not one to complain for free items. Once I survived being burnt alive, the campfire cult tried to explain defense to me. But let's be honest, nobody has the time to listen to a cult try to explain something meaningless to them, so I ignored it all. With that, I finally got back to breaking the logs for Charlie. Well, I found this person called Gustav who challenged me to race through the woods. But turns out I needed foraging 5 to actually complete the race, so I broke some acacia logs to boost my foraging level, and I ran the entire race. I got a polished pebble. Yay. I redid the woods racing for yet another prize. This time, it was a little bit less disappointing, however. It gave me an item which, when held, increases my speed. After gathering my hunter's knife, I went back to the hub, sold my items, and then went to the auction house looking for a better axe. Well, it turns out I'm pretty broke in Hypixel Skyblock, so I didn't end up buying an axe, but instead I broke all of these logs and then went back to my private island to make some chests. Now, I needed some chests as I kept running out of inventory space, but turns out this server is on an older version of Minecraft where you couldn't place chests directly next to each other. I tried relaunching on a newer version because I thought potentially it was a client-side issue, but turns out it isn't. When I found this out, I just changed my chests to stack on top of each other, which works the same, and design didn't matter that much anyways, because I wouldn't be looking at these chests for too long. Now, I went back to the hub, and immediately I see a rock. How do I get a pet rock? This is the start of something that will make regular Skyblock players cry, but luckily for me, I'm not a regular Skyblock player. I should make some money. That's what I need to do now. I need to make money so that I can buy that axe that we saw earlier. That axe that we saw earlier was the jungle axe, an axe that allows you to break multiple logs at the same time, and it's a reasonably cheap alternative to buying the tree captator. Now, the way I decided to try make money was through wheat and seeds, as you saw, which actually worked out kind of well, shockingly, as I had just enough money to buy a brand new jungle axe for myself from the auction house. With my new axe, I went to go destroy a bunch of oak logs back near the lumberjack, because why not? I might as well destroy a bunch of trees with my brand new hyper powerful axe. But then I decided to sell them all to an NPC because I didn't really need any of the logs. Well, next up, I had to mine some coal and cobblestone to get extra mining XP so that I can access the gold mine, because I actually wanted to start exploring the mining areas, as I've heard that you can make a lot of money by mining. But I'm not really sure whether that's true to this day, because I kind of give up on mining pretty quickly, to be honest. But hey, here we are, level 1 mining. First things first, I went to speak to the lazy miner who wanted me to find his pickaxe for him, as he lost it somewhere in the gold mine, which I found pretty quickly. And then I mined a few pieces of gold with it because for some reason the miner didn't want it back. After that, I ran up to go speak to Rusty the janitor, who added the pickaxe to his store so that if I ever lost the item, I could buy it and use it again if I ever needed it. With that, I had completed all that I could do on the gold mine, and now I just had to mine up until I was level 5 in mining, so that I could go to the deep caverns. When I leveled up, I immediately ran to the deep caverns, and once I arrived there, I spoke to the lift operator, who explained that I could go to any level I wanted, but only after I had visited the level myself, by traveling through the caves. So I did exactly that, while mining some resources on each level as I went. The first place you enter as you go down the mine is the Lapis Quarry, which has, to nobody's surprise, Lapis. Alongside this, there's some zombies wearing Lapis armor, which are kind of deadly, but I still tried to murder a few to see if I'd get lucky and get some free items which I can sell on the auction house for some pretty quick money. Although I didn't end up getting any items in the end, so it didn't really matter. Next up, I ran down to the Pigman's Den, which had redstone inside of it. Although I decided, unlike the Lapis zombies, I wouldn't attack the Pigman, because I was kinda scared of dying to them. Instead, I just ran through the mine completely normally, finding my way rather quickly to the next level. That next level I refer to being Slime Hill. Slime Hill is a level with, you guessed it, slimes. Now, beyond that, there's also emeralds here, but I didn't get to mine any of those because I decided to attack the slimes instead and get some slime balls. which didn't go entirely to plan, and I ended up getting gooped by a slime. After that slight humiliation, I decided to head to the bank and deposit the remaining half of my coins that I didn't just lose into my bank. Then, I went to go sell my mining-related items to hopefully make a little bit of money back, which didn't go so well as I only made 972 coins from all of the stuff I sold. Well, money's money, so I went to go deposit it back into my bank account just to make sure it was safe. After that, I decided to run back to the coal mines, and I went to go collect a secret fairy soul that I remembered from the previous time that I played Hypixel Skyblock. I then went back slightly into the village and spoke to the blacksmith, who explained reforges to me, and asked for 10 coal for me to reforge an item. Reforges provide small boosts to gear, such as the reforge I just got on my pickaxe, which increased my mining fortune by 1. I then went to go speak to the carpenter, who asked me to collect him a stack of white wool, which I could go purchase from the wool weaver, or I could go collect myself manually from the barn. Well, I love myself some sheep murder, so I went my way onto the barn, but before I could get there, I was distracted by wheat farming. I do not know my motive for collecting that amount of wheat, as I didn't actually need it for anything, but I went and sold it all to the farm merchant, which made me just over 11,000 coins that I immediately deposited into my bank so that I didn't lose it all. I finally now ran to the barn to go collect the carpenter his what? Are you fucking kidding me? Alright, now that's over, I went to go murder some sheep. Actually, quite a lot of sheep. But it wasn't really enough, so I ran back to the mines and grabbed some iron to make some shears. Then I ran back to the barn to shear some sheep instead of murdering them, which sped up my wool collection process by a reasonable amount. Once I got my stack of wool, I headed back to the carpenter, who gave me a recipe for the carpentry table, which lets me craft different types of furniture and decorations for my island. After helping the carpenter, I did a range of menial and boring tasks for about an hour to earn some money, up to around 21,000 coins, which I then spent all on a singular rock pet, which was entirely worth it. I mean, just look at the little guy. He looks adorable. Well, after getting my pet rock, I decided to play the harp to try and earn some Skyblock XP, but I'm not very musically minded, and it very quickly went kinda horribly wrong. Although I did earn a respectable amount of free XP by the end of it, so I will happily accept that. But with that, my first day of Hypixel Skyblock concludes. Day 2 began with me speaking to the fisherman, who asked me to collect him 5 pieces of clay. Now, my initial solution was to just go punch the clay underneath the pond he was sat on, but that didn't work to plan, so I gave up very quickly. After that, I met Tia the Fairy, who introduced what fairy souls were. For every 5 fairy souls that I collect for her, I get given some rewards, including Skyblock XP and backpack slots. I then decided to go complete some quests, the first of which being that I needed to mine some lapis to get up to Lapis Collection 3. As an added bonus, this leveled up my rock pet as well. While I was down there, I also stabbed a lot of lapis zombies, which helped me level up my combat XP a little bit, and I got a free pair of lapis leggings and lapis boots from it. Once I got to Lapis 3, I crafted a lapis pickaxe for the lapis miner, and in response, the lapis miner gave me a compactor. I then spoke to the redstone miner, who wanted me to get to redstone collection 2. However, the pigmen had a different plan in mind for me, and instead they decided to murder me, meaning I lost over 4,000 coins for nothing. Well, I'm not someone who gets distracted from my goals, so I went back and continued mining, but I got attacked yet again. So this time I decided I was going to just flee to Slime Hill and survive. Continuing the questline, in Slime Hill I had to gather emeralds, which after some close calls with some slimes, I did. After that, I was told that I needed to go down to the Diamond Reserve. Now, this was new territory to me as I'd never actually made it down to that area yet, but with the help of another person, I made it down, very quickly grabbed the diamond and teleported back to the hub. Then I sold everything I had to make some money very quickly. After my mining trip, I decided to visit the election room, where a current mayoral election was ongoing. There were a few candidates standing in a circle, but only one mattered to me. Jerry. Well, turns out Jerry was pretty popular, with over 1 million votes. So I'm not alone in my love for Jerry. If you love Jerry, you should like and subscribe. And if you don't, you should also like and subscribe. Ignoring that very shameful self-promotion, I decided to go to the Foraging Islands and collect some dark oak logs for Charlie, who then gave me a small storage for completing his task. I then went to go play the harp to get a bunch of Skyblock XP for free. While my poor harp playing is ongoing, I should probably explain why I actually want Skyblock XP, because I haven't really explained it up to this point. In Hypixel Skyblock, there's a certain feature locked behind Skyblock level 7 called the Bazaar, which I want to unlock. The Bazaar is basically a market where players can buy and sell different items. Things from different wood types, to wheat, to items like the stock of stonks. Well, on this Bazaar, players can make a lot of money by selling items to each other. And I had a strong need to make money right now as I was broke in the Skyblock economy. Well, now that I've exposed my poverty, let's talk about murder. Specifically murdering this rat, which has a very small chance to give me a rat pet. Well, I spent about 4 minutes trying to murder it, and in the end, I got no rat pet. Instead, I got cheese, which I didn't actually know what to do with as I needed to unlock the garden before I could use it. After that, I decided to do some mining. But first, I needed to get some armor, as I've had enough of dying to basic mobs that are really easy to survive. Well, with the armor that I bought, I decided to reforge it as well, which gives it some small boosts which are reasonably cheap to apply. I'm also wearing the lapis armor that I got earlier. Now, I'm not sure if it was actually better than the armor that I bought, but to be honest, it didn't really matter. I didn't need much better armor. This worked well enough. With my new gear in hand, I finally went back to the redstone mines and tried once again to complete the redstone miners quest. But as per usual, the pigman got upset and forced me to cower away back to the hub. But I'm not the type of person to be scared off that easily, so I went back to the deep caverns and back to the redstone mine. Although the pigman got upset this time while I was talking to the redstone miner, but luckily for me, this time I had private security protecting me from harm's way, so I was fine to have my chat with the redstone miner and get my extra bonus slot for my accessory bag, which I still hadn't actually touched, but that's besides the point. After my little chat, I went back to the hub and sold my items yet again. Well, this time in the hub, I decided to go to the graveyard to get to the spider's den and collect some string, as I wanted to start fishing. Killing the spiders wasn't too hard, and I had some wood in my inventory from having earlier already chopped some logs near the lumberjack, so I had honestly quite a good time getting a fishing rod. Well, I found myself the tiniest little puddle of water to fish in, threw my hook out, and caught a salmon. Well, I don't need a salmon, so I cast my hook again, and this time I got a cod. Technically a fish in Skyblock terms because the server's running on an older version of Minecraft, but I'm always going to call it a cod because I play on the newest version and I think it just makes more sense. Once again, that was not the fish I needed, so I cast my hook into the tiny little puddle again, and this time I got another cod. Well, at this point I decided surely my location for fishing was the problem, so I ran my way to the random pond in the middle of the wilderness. Well, in the pond I did catch something new. I got a pufferfish. Now, pufferfish are good because they give you a bit more fishing XP than other fish, so I'm not going to complain. However, sadly, that was not what I needed from this pond. Instead, I kept fishing, and just to speed things up a little bit, I got another cod, then another pufferfish, and finally I got a clay ball. So, yes, fishing is how I was supposed to get clay. Believe it or not, the fisherman would guide you to begin fishing. Who could have guessed? Well, continuing on with my fishing, I got a few more cods, and then a random squid, which I just left to swim around because I didn't actually know what it did yet, and then a few more clay balls. Then, eventually, after a little bit more fishing, I caught a sea walker. Now, I did not have a weapon that could deal with that, so I ran away like a little baby and fished in the river instead. Well, in the river, I caught some more random fish, a music disc, another random squid, and then another clay ball that was needed for the fisherman's quest, then some more fish, and finally, the last clay ball I needed to complete the quest. I then ran around the sea walker that would almost certainly murder me if I got anywhere near it, to the fisherman to hand in the quest, and as a reward, he gave me a free prismarine rod. I then decided my next best option for Skyblock XP was to go to the Mushroom Island and enter the Mushroom Cave to finally unlock the Mushroom Collection, as somehow I'd entirely dodged farming any mushrooms by this point. But don't worry, that will change. With my jungle axe in hand, I slowly broke some mushrooms, and I got my mushroom collection to level 1. I then teleported back to the hub and farmed some wheat for even more Skyblock XP, alongside also trying to farm seeds, but running out of inventory space, so instead of continuing, I sold all the items I collected, then ran back to farm even more. I was finally happy at both wheat and seed 6, so I sold everything I had gathered for even more money. Now, just for some context while you watch me farm some carrots, I went to the auction house and bid on a couple of different random items that I thought maybe would be decent profit if I could just have them. But it turns out some of these items were kind of going up higher in price than I have. The worst part being I didn't even know what the pet did, so there's a high likelihood this could have been a waste of money. Well, lucky for me, my opposing bidder was willing to speed up that decision for me by bidding over 60,000 coins, an amount I was nowhere near having, so that tarantula pet was all theirs. Instead of moving on from my farming insanity, I decided to go farm some potatoes instead. But then I immediately went and sold all of the potatoes I farmed to the farm merchant because I really didn't actually want potatoes, I just felt like collecting something more. Next up, I went to go farm some netherwort, then some more potatoes, then some more netherwort. I don't know what came over me today, I really did feel like being a farming player. This time, I sold my items to the fish merchant, and moved on to more potato farming. I don't know what my obsession with potatoes was, maybe something from watching so much Technoblade had rubbed off onto me and caused utter brain rot. But yet again, I went to go sell those potatoes to the fish merchant, and then I went to go farm yet another smaller patch of potatoes. Well, I decided to finally buy a rookie hoe, and then went back to my wheat-oriented roots, breaking and then selling a whole inventory load of wheat and seeds. Albeit it was mostly seeds, as that's what the rookie hoe gave me more of. After that, I broke some more potatoes, sold them all, and then for some reason I decided that I wanted to buy the bank vault. I'm not sure why, as I still had ender chest pages to use, but I'm assuming I forgot about them at the time or something. I then decided to break even more wheat, and I'm not sure why, because there really was no benefit to this amount of wheat being broken. Hell, I even went to another farming island to go farm even more wheat. It really doesn't make sense to me. But it obviously worked at the time and provided me some benefit that I, in the future, am too short-sighted to see. Well, next I decided to go on a murderous rampage, murdering countless cows, pigs, and a hell of a lot of chickens. This was in an attempt to get my animal collections to improve. However, animal loot collections seem to be harder to level up than just stabbing a couple of creatures, so I gave up very quickly and moved on to breaking melons and pumpkins. Then, finally, I went to go sell my assortment of random farming-related items to the farm merchant. To the joy of all the wheat farmers watching, I went back to farming a lot of wheat, but I decided to stop at farming level 12. I have no idea why, but apparently that was my number where I decided to stop. I then returned to the farm merchant and sold all I had gathered except for my wheat. Now, the reasoning for this is because I wanted a wheat minion. Now, while we're on my island, I should explain minions slightly. Basically, these are creatures that will help you when you're offline or away from your island, or even when you're at your island. They will farm things for you. They collect whatever resource their job is. For example, this wheat minion collects wheat, and my cobblestone minion collects me free cobblestone. Now, those two items alone are not that useful, but later down the line, I can get diamond minions and other minions for various rare items. Well, after sorting my minions' first few levels out, I went back to the hub and farmed more wheat so that I could level it up more. I went to go do that exactly. After I leveled up my minion, however, I noticed a mysterious person, and I went to go speak to them. They introduced themselves as Sam, alongside asking me for help with the garden. The garden is basically like a private version of the farming islands where you can build your own farms and grow whatever crops you would like. And as you can imagine with how much time I've spent farming so far, I am going to love this island. To begin on my garden, I had to put some of my hard-earned wheat into a composter, alongside buying a piece of biofuel, which allowed me to make a singular piece of compost. The compost I got can be used to unlock garden plots. But unluckily for me, garden plots are a fucking mess. Lucky for you, however, I'm going to cut all of it, because it is so unbelievably boring, I do not dare include it in this video, otherwise you would all stop watching. Now my will to live has disappeared, let's see what Sam wants from me. Well, apparently Sam wants to bake some bread. And to bake this bread, Sam needs 100 wheat. Personally, I only need about 3 pieces of wheat per bread, but I guess Sam is making some super special bread for us that will have... It did literally nothing, who am I kidding? But hey, At least with this bread, Sam came up with a cool business venture. So now we can open up a small side stand to our farm to sell our crops to NPCs and get some copper and other rewards from them. Well, turns out to make a farm, you need seeds. So I went and broke a bunch of wheat back in the hub yet again, because for some reason I have an unhealthy obsession with wheat farming. When I went back to my garden, my seeds were stolen very quickly from my inventory as the plot slowly pasted into a very small but nice wheat field for me to farm. Although my seeds ran out very quickly, so I only had a few lines of wheat that I could farm. Beyond that, it was just empty tilled soil. That obviously meant I needed to do more wheat farming because the already excessive amount wasn't enough. Well, I decided to craft my seeds into enchanted seeds. Now, I'm not entirely sure why, but I did. Next up, I went to the hub and looked for a personal compactor in the auction house, but I found out that I am poor, they are expensive. So I decided to instead set up an axe for my major money-making plan. Well, that's actually skipping a little bit, because first I need to get some diamonds to craft an enchanting table, because sadly the enchanting table in the hub had too low of a bookshelf power to give me silk touch, something I desperately needed if I was going to make infinite amounts of money. I then made some bookshelves out of the wood and books that I already owned. I'm not sure where I got the books from, but I already own them, so it doesn't matter. Now my biggest problem was that I needed obsidian. And I hadn't actually ever gone far enough down into the mines to get obsidian, so I thought this was going to be a pretty daunting task. Oh, never mind, we just made it there, no problem. I got my obsidian, and I left and made my enchanting table. On my island, I then went and placed my enchanting table alongside the bookshelves, which give it the bookshelf power it needed to make a silk touch axe. Well, that's what I would have said if I remembered I actually wanted a silk touch axe. But instead, for some reason, I decided to enchant my hoe. I put harvesting 5 on my hoe, which increased my farming fortune, which, if I explain simply, basically just means I get more crops per crop. I then went to the hub to enchant my axe, only to efficiency 3 though, as I couldn't afford efficiency 5. But then finally, I went to the mushroom cave, axe in hand, and broke some mushroom blocks, which gave me a very measly amount of mushrooms. But then at the very end of my farming trip, I decided to switch to my hoe, which I remember I enchanted earlier with harvesting 5, but apparently also silk touch at some point. Well, my solution to the slow mushroom farm with a hoe was to add efficiency 5 to it instead of using the axe, which is already an insta-break that we saw earlier. While we were in the enchanting room, I also enchanted my sword to sharpness 5 because I had some leftover XP after enchanting my hoe. And with my newly enchanted hoe, I went and took part in a carrot contest by farming some carrots on the farming island, as I thought I could easily get bronze, which gave me some simple rewards which weren't amazing, but they do add up if you get more medals. After my little moment with carrot farming, I then went back to the mushroom cave and broke some more mushrooms. I found out the efficiency on my hoe meant absolutely nothing to the mushroom blocks, as in the version Hypixel Skyblock runs on, hoes do not have the insane update which made them an actually useful tool for farming mushrooms. Finally, after all of this time, I remembered what my initial goal was and I enchanted my axe with silk touch. I then went back to the mushroom cave and all was well, farming mushrooms with my efficiency axe, with silk touch, hoping to make a lot of money. Now, I did this for a little while, and by a little while, I mean until my inventory was full of mushrooms, and then I went to the hub and sold it all, making about 20,000 coins. Next up, I went to the farming island once again and broke some melons and pumpkins. Then, I stabbed some animals, farmed a few carrots, and finally, I was at Skyblock level 7, unlocking the bazaar. But to use the bazaar, I needed items to sell. So, I broke a small, tiny amount of mushrooms. Well, when I made it back to the hub, I had a full inventory of mushrooms, which I sold, making about 100,000 coins. Adding that to my bank, I had almost 200,000 coins to end off day 2 of my Hypixel Skyblock playthrough. I began my 3rd day of Hypixel Skyblock right, by farming even more mushrooms. In fact, I farmed yet another full inventory of mushrooms. I then went to the bazaar and put the mushrooms into sell orders for almost 250,000 coins. I then went back to the mushroom island and filled my inventory again, Then I went back to the hub and put it all in a sell order to the bazaar again, and I repeated that a few more times before going and enchanting my pickaxe. I gave my pickaxe Efficiency 5, Fortune 3, Experience 3, and Smelting Touch. For some reason, I then decided to go to my garden and saw that one of my visitors wanted 60 hay bales. So I went to the hub and farmed them a bunch of wheat. Well, I then went to the garden and broke a bunch of wheat that hadn't actually grown yet, although it must have worked somewhat as I had more than enough hay bales for Tom's request. After that, I went back to farming wheat for the next of my visitors, and then I gave that visitor the hay bales they requested. Another visitor asked for more wheat, so I farmed some more wheat and filled their request. I then went to farm even more wheat, but this time in the hub as my garden plot hadn't fully grown back yet. And this farming was to fill my composter so that I could gather more compost and hopefully get another garden plot. After my small stint farming wheat again, I went to go farm mushrooms on the Mushroom Island. I then went and put all of those mushrooms into sell orders on the bazaar to make even more money. While I was at the bazaar, I bought a piece of compost and then I unlocked plot number 2 on my garden. Once again, I had cleanup to do, but it's super boring, so I skipped it for you. But then I decided to leave my garden yet again and farm even more mushrooms. I then went and sold all of my mushrooms to the bazaar once again. After that, I went back to wheat farming on my garden, both for more compost out of my composter and for a visitor who asked for some hay bales, which I gladly gave them. When I logged onto Skyblock for day 4, my garden had become overrun with creatures called pests. Pests are a problem because they lower the amount of crops you get per crop you break. So I had to try and find a way to murder them, which I initially thought my hoe would be good for, but that didn't work. Then I got my sword out, but that also didn't work. However, in-game chat kindly told me to speak to Pest Hunter Philip to get a vacuum, which can be used to inhale the pests entirely. Now, as you murder the pests, you get small amounts of items for free. Usually enchanted crops, but also rarely some other items. The ones on my island gave me enchanted hay bales, carrots, potatoes, sugar, and pumpkins. With my newly acquired enchanted carrots, I pasted the garden plot that I cleaned up the day before. As my brand new carrot plot pasted, I went to farm some wheat. But while I was farming, a mysterious creature spawned called a Jerry. When killed, this Jerry dropped a green Jerry box, which I forgot to open until later, but I continued farming even more wheat. Alright, now back to mushroom farming, the thing we all know and love. Actually, as far as I know, nobody really loves it, but I love doing it, so... Next up, I went to the bazaar to sell my items. But then I saw the price of brown mushrooms. It was at 10,000 coins for a single brown mushroom block. In what world would anyone pay that? Well, once I set my sell orders up in the bazaar, I went to the auction house to buy a personal compactor 4000. While I'm breaking these mushrooms, let me explain what the personal compactor does. In Skyblock, some items can be compacted into enchanted forms, which are just more compact versions so that you can carry more in your inventory. For mushrooms specifically, you can make enchanted mushrooms and then enchanted mushroom blocks. The personal compactor does this automatically as you farm the mushrooms manually. With my next mushroom farming stint over, I went to the bazaar with a lot of mushrooms, as I had been farming for around an hour, and I made 1.3 million coins from the bazaar. With my newfound riches, I went back to the auction house and bought some more personal compactor 4000 so that I could turn the smaller enchanted mushrooms into enchanted mushroom blocks, just so that I could farm for even longer. With my new personal compactors, I then went back to the Mushroom Island yet again, and farmed even more mushrooms. This has got to be getting stale by now, surely. I then went and sold those mushrooms for about 700,000 coins. I then used some of that money that I just earned to buy an aspect of the end, which allows me to teleport short distances by right-clicking my sword. I took a smaller trip to the Mushroom Island, only farming for just over a minute before getting distracted by wanting to get wheat so that I could make farm armor. With that idea in mind, I began farming to get my farming collection high enough to actually be able to make the farm armor. But then I found out I needed a lot more wheat than I had, so I went to my garden and farmed even more wheat. During my wheat farming, a green Jerry appeared, but I had been told by my chat that it's not worth actually opening these boxes as they sell for more on the bazaar, so I listened to them. Once I finished farming, I was a little bit short on enchanted hay bales, so I bought a few on the bazaar, and then I made my farm armor. Well, with my new farm armor equipped, I decided to farm some carrots for a visitor request. After that, however, I went to go speak to Pamela and Philip, the pest enthusiasts who explained everything and anything to do with the pests in the game. Pamela gave me a sprayinator and some cheese to spray on my garden plot, which lured a rat pest onto my garden. Although, as soon as I started with the pests, I decided I hated them, so I went back to my wheat farm. Quickly, just as an aside, because I haven't really explained yet, I don't show every single visitor in this video because it gets rather boring rather quickly running back and forth. But just know that when I'm farming things, it's either A, for visitors who give me copper farming XP and garden XP, or for B, my composter, because I want to make more garden plots. Speaking of new garden plots, my composter had just given me enough compost to buy a new one, so I did, and hey, look at that, it's magically cleaned itself. I then went back to the hub and bought 50 enchanted potatoes from the bazaar, and then I went and pasted the potato plot in my garden. I then went back to the hub and bought an advanced gardening hoe, which I enchanted with Harvesting 5 alongside Replenish. With my new hoe, I went back to my garden to take part in a carrot farming contest, which I got a silver medal in. I then farmed a little bit of wheat, but eventually, I went back to my roots as a mushroom cave miner. I also timed myself so that I could find out how much money I made per hour, and the answer was 2.3 million per hour at this point in time, which was not bad, saying I'd not even been playing for a week yet. The beginning of day 5 was very similar to the beginning of day 4. I went to my garden and I murdered some pests yet again. I didn't actually do anything with those pests, however, as instead I went to the mushroom island and broke some mushrooms. Only for about 5 minutes though, as I went to the garden and then farmed a load of wheat for a wheat farming contest, and I got a silver medal. I used that silver medal alongside 3 other medals I had gathered from farming other crops to get a fungi cutter, which I tried to use on floor mushrooms, although it was rather inefficient, so I went back to using my normal axe. Well, with a small amount of mushroom farming complete, I went to the bazaar and sold all of the mushrooms I had gathered, making a nice 500,000 coins. I then decided to enchant my aspect to the end with Sharpness 5, Looting 3, Luck 5, and Lifesteal 3. With my newly enchanted sword, I went to the deep caverns and mined diamonds in order to make a diamond minion for my island, which I placed right next to my cobblestone minion. I then went back to the deep caverns to do even more diamond mining, while also trying to get to mining level 12 so that I could unlock the heart of the mountain, whatever that meant. With my new diamonds, I crafted 7 more diamond minions, which I then placed 5 of on my island, but I couldn't place any more as I had reached my minion limit. Next up, I was told to level my mining up faster, I should use a shovel and dig a bunch of sand. So yeah, I did that, and it was quite a bit faster than diamond mining. With mining 12, I spoke to Reese about Heart of the Mountain, but he told me he wanted some valuable minerals. On one hand, I could mine them manually, or I could just go spend some of my mushroom money to buy the items in the bazaar. As you saw, I chose the latter, and I returned to Reese with the minerals he requested, and with that, he gave me access to the Dwarven mines. I was spawned in the Dwarven village, and my first thought as an English person going to a new place was to see what the pub was like. But then I realized that I'm a non-alcoholic and I'm under 18, so I left very quickly. My first actual stop, however, was a pickaxe shop, where I bought a fractured mithril pickaxe from Bubba. With my new pickaxe in hand, I went to mine some mithril. However, my British instincts once again kicked in, and I went back to the pub and burped. After a good pint, as a thank you as well, the dwarves gave me a free tankard to take home with me. When I returned back to where I had been mining, someone had left some titanium behind, which I ever so kindly mined. With my stolen titanium, I decided to return to the hub and enchant my brand new pickaxe with Efficiency 5 and Fortune 3. Now me and my newly enchanted pickaxe went back to mithril mining. Only for a little while though, as I decided to go to the auction house and purchase a Pico Nimbus. With my new pickaxe, I went to the Dwarven mines and went to go try and find the king. Only problem being I didn't actually know where he was. So I ran around for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then I just took the train to see the king as it was much simpler. Well, as I met the king, he had some requests for me. He wanted me to mine 50 mithril, so I did exactly that. And as a reward, the king gave me Heart of the Mountain experience, mining experience, and mithril powder. Alongside this, the king had another quest for me. Mine 2 titanium, which someone had already kindly summoned in for me by mining mithril. I then returned to the king yet again, and this time I was requested to mine 150 mithril ore, which I went and did with great ease. When I returned to the king, I accidentally stood in his fire, but I still handed in my quest as a good mining peasant. And with that, the new quest I had was to kill 50 creatures from the mines. Luckily for me, I'm a god at PvP, so I very quickly went and stabbed a handful of creatures. But then my very terrible attention span got distracted, so I went to mine mithril. While I was mining, a golden goblin spawned in. Now, I'm not sure what it did, but I was more than happy to stab it, which I did, and it gave me gold essence. I then went back to mithril mining, but got distracted equally as quickly as before by Master Longdong, who I took a screenshot with. Thank you for your service, Master Longdong. I then went to continue stabbing stuff. It didn't go well for me though, so I ran away like a little baby, until I went back in for round 2, but then I got murdered. I'm glad I put my coins in the bank. Don't worry, I went back and finished off the creature that had killed me before. I then went to the Glaciite wall to go murder Glaciite walkers because they were a lot easier to murder, and I stabbed a load of them. Then I jumped into one with my grappling hook and it immediately stabbed me, so that was kinda sad. But I went back and continued murdering them. I also got a free green jerry. When my commission finally finished, I went back to the king and handed both of them in, as my other commission was to take part in a mining event which I had done in the time killing things. My new commissions were to take part in a goblin raid and also mine 250 mithril ore. I decided to take a train to the Forge Basin, and when I got there, I stabbed a load of goblins. Although I was struggling a little bit, as they are pretty deadly. Well, after murdering the goblins, I'd completed my commission to take part in the goblin raid. So I went back to the king and claimed my rewards. After that, I went to go mine mithril for my other commission. With that mission complete yet again, I returned to the king and received my rewards. My next quest was to mine titanium in the upper mines, but I decided not to do that quest, and instead I went back to my island and collected diamonds from all of my diamond minions, and then I upgraded a few to level 2. With my new minions leveled, I went to my garden and eliminated the pests that had arrived while I was gone. Then I farmed some carrots. Actually, quite a lot of carrots, as multiple of my visitors wanted an insane amount of carrots. After farming a lot of carrots, I went to the auction house and purchased an Aurora Staff, one of the most powerful weapons I could get at this point in the game, which I then purchased a looting 4-book for and enchanted in the anvil. I then went to the Dwarven Caverns, and in specific to Rampart's Quarry, where I found myself murdering treasure hunters who dropped Starfall. Well, I murdered these creatures for a while, until one killed me, but then I went straight back up with another train and then continued murdering even more of them. With the Starfall I had eventually gathered, I went to the forge and started forging a power crystal, which I will sell tomorrow when it's finished forging. That, however, was enough mining for me, so I went back to my garden and farmed some more carrots. I then went to my composter and realized I had 8 compost, which is exactly how much I needed for my next garden plot. Once again, I'm going to save you the cleanup time, but I will show the cool pasting that happened because I didn't break many of the trees, and instead I just dug the dirt out. Look at that. Well, with my gardening happily complete, I went to visit the wizard, who spoke to me and introduced the rift to me, which I went to visit. However, I didn't understand it while I was there, so I gave up very quickly, and I still haven't touched it to this day. Day 6 began with me collecting diamonds from all of my diamond minions, and upgrading a few to the next tier. After that, I went to my garden and had to clean up the pests that had arrived overnight yet again. And when all the pests were cleared, I farmed some carrots. I then switched it up to potato farming for a different visitor, and then I decided to farm my entire wheat field, and then I went back to potatoes again, and then to carrots. An hour of farming was enough farming for me, so I went to the Dwarven Caverns and spoke to the king to remind myself of my next commission, which was to mine titanium ore in the upper mines. Before I went to the upper mines though, I went to the forge to collect the item I started forging yesterday, which I took to the bazaar and sold. With that sold, I went to the upper mines and mined some mithril, hoping to spawn titanium, before getting distracted by a raffle event that had started. In the raffle, you run around the area wherever it's being hosted and gather tickets to put into a magic box that will eventually choose winners. When the end came around, however, I didn't win anything, but I did get given 16,000 mining XP and 80 Heart of the Mountain XP as a consolation prize. Then I returned to the upper mines in hopes of spawning more titanium, which I eventually did and completed the commission. I then went to the king, who gave me the next commission, which was to mine 10 titanium in the royal mines. I don't believe I've fully explained it, but as you mine mithril in any area of the dwarven mines, there's a chance it turns into titanium. So I had to mine quite a lot of mithril to spawn the 10 titanium I needed for these quests. Or I could steal it from other players who spawned it as they were mining. Anyways, once I completed the commission, I went to the hub and sold the items I had gathered while mining to the bazaar. With those items sold, I went to the garden and unlocked a new garden plot, and I finished clearing it, once again skipping it because it's very boring. Then I went fishing in the hub, although nothing majorly of note happened, so I'll just skip past this. When I was done fishing, I introduced myself to alchemy to gain some alchemy experience, alongside some potions that I would genuinely never use. When I went back to my garden, however, I found a 1x1 hole of water, which I decided for some reason to fish some cod out of. After that though, I went back to potato farming. Then I did a little bit of sugarcane farming, then some pumpkin farming, then some more sugarcane, back to carrots, then some wheat, then back to sugarcane, then some more pumpkins, then back to even more sugarcane, then back to pumpkins, and then finally, to end the day off, some wheat. Day 7 began with me on my island, where I collected some diamonds from my diamond minions, and then I upgraded some of them, with most now being at level 4. I then went to my garden and started farming pumpkins, but I forgot to murder the pests, so I was only getting 25% of the pumpkins I was farming. But I did realize shortly after, and I murdered all of the pests in quick succession. Then, I went back to farming even more pumpkins. I then went to farm some potatoes in the most uncomfortable way I can imagine. I'm sorry, Skyblock farmers. After that, I went to the Mushroom Island and farmed some cocoa beans, as I wanted to improve my collection level, but I didn't end up leveling it up at all. With that portion of farming done, I decided to go to the Dwarven Mines, and an event was ongoing called Mithril Gourmand. Basically, some dude wanted a bunch of edible mithril, but he wanted me to go to the Goblin Burrows, which I still felt wildly under-equipped for, but I did get a pair of Goblin Boots from my little stint there. I then went to the king to go check my quests, which at the moment was to go mine 15 titanium, so I went to go do that. Once I finished mining the titanium, I went to the king to collect my reward, and then I was told to mine even more titanium, but this time in the royal mines. Luckily for me though, someone had left a bunch of titanium over from where they'd been mining earlier, so this quest was easier than the previous one. Now I had to go mine 250 mithril in the upper mines, so off I went to mine a lot of mithril. While I'm mining this mithril, why don't you mine that subscribe button? Bad joke? Okay, understood. Back to the video. Once I finished the commission, I went back to the king, who then gave me a quest to go mine 250 more mithril in the cliffside veins. Well, once again I completed the commission and spoke to the king again, and now I had to go to Rampart's quarry. Well, off I went, although halfway through I got distracted by a goblin raid event and went to go partake in that instead of mindlessly mining mithril, as my other mining commission was to murder goblins in the goblin raid event. With that complete, I rushed to the king to go get my rewards, and then I went back to mining mithril like before. Once I finished mining the mithril, I handed the commission into the king, and once I received my rewards, I returned to the hub and sold the items that I'd gathered while mining. I then decided to return to the campfire cult to set myself alight for even longer periods of time, and I upgraded my badge a few more times. For some reason, I decided my next idea would be to go murder goblins in the dwarven mines to get more goblin armor, as I thought that would be enough armor to survive the fire for longer. But I forgot to put my money in the bank, so I lost over 500,000 coins to a goblin. Rest in peace. I then decided to return to the Goblin Burrows to keep trying to get goblin armor, but then shortly thereafter, I left and went to see the king to see my mining commissions yet again. I also got the king's talisman for meeting all of the kings. Nice. Well, my next commission was to mine titanium in the upper mines, which I did very easily with the help of someone else spawning it in for me using a drill. Back to the king yet again, however this time my quest was to kill 100 goblins. So off I went and shot some goblins with my Aurora staff. I then went back to the king and collected my rewards, and this time I was told that I needed to mine 10 titanium in the upper mines. Once again I completed that, and now my new request was to mine 250 mithril ore in Rampart's quarry, which I completed. And then I returned to the king, who told me I need to mine 250 mithril ore in the upper mines. Now, while I'm doing that, I should actually explain why Heart of the Mountain experience is so important to me at the moment. When you get to certain Heart of the Mountain levels, you unlock new things. The thing I want to access specifically is an area of the mines called the Crystal Hollows. Now, I didn't know much about it yet, but it looked cool from what I'd seen of it, so I wanted to go visit and see what was there. Well, with that last mining commission complete, I was Heart of the Mountain 3. With Heart of the Mountain, you can also get some minor boosts to other mining-related things, such as increased titanium spawning, increased mining speed, and other stuff like that. But now, I think it's time to take a short minecart ride to the Crystal Hollows. When I arrived in the Crystal Hollows, I spawned in the mithril deposits. Now the Crystal Hollows are rather large and easy to get lost in, but who cares? There's cool stuff here. First up, I found this thing called a grunt, which I killed and it gave me some rubies. A new item that can only be gathered in the Crystal Hollows alongside other gemstones of similar value. Next, I found this random opening in the cave with a house visible. So I jumped down to see more. Inside, there was a basement, but there was nothing inside. Lucky for me though, more grunts spawned around it, so I murdered them. I then left and I ran around for a while before I found the Mines of Devon. A large mining area with gold, emeralds, diamonds, and redstone galore. After I arrived, I went up and spoke with the Keeper of Lapis, who gave me a metal detector, which allowed me to search for treasures in the area below. In these chests, I got given various items, such as gemstones and gemstone powder. But more importantly, I was searching for scavenged items for the people who were standing around the large crystal above me. First, I found a scavenged diamond axe, which I gave to the Keeper of Diamond. I ended up disconnecting due to some kind of bug, so instead of running back to the Mines of Devon manually, I went to the portal hub and teleported to the crystal nucleus, not fully knowing what this area was. Well, turns out it's a hub of sorts, but instead of trying to explore the area, I decided to run back to the Mines of Devon immediately because this wasn't really relevant to me yet. I then got a scavenged lapis sword, and then some gemstone powder, and then finally a scavenged golden hammer, which I decided to head back up to the keepers with and hand each item to their respective owner. However, we were still missing the emerald hammer, so I went down and continued metal detecting, and I got it out of my first box. So I went upstairs and handed it to the Keeper of Emerald, which let me gather the big jade crystal in the center of the Mines of Devon. Before I left the Mines of Devon, I mined some smaller jade crystals and some redstone to try and get my redstone collection up. With the money I had gathered, I decided to buy some backpacks to fill the backpack slots that I had unlocked with the fairy souls I'd been gathering throughout the week, which gave me 18 more inventory slots per backpack. While I was buying those backpacks, however, someone in my chat found me a redstone vein that I could mine very easily, which I followed through on for a little while, but I got bored and decided to instead return to the Mines of Devon. After a lot of redstone mining, my Pico Nimbus broke, so I went to the auction house and purchased 3 more. With my new pickaxes, I went to the crystal nucleus yet again, and decided to explore the mines, running around using wishing compasses that I had purchased from the bazaar. During my trip, I got hit by an arrow trap, mined some redstone, found a city infested with robots, spoke to Professor Robot, don't worry, as of right now he's irrelevant, and found a random forge in the middle of nowhere. I then went back to my redstone vein route that I had learnt, but that was very short-lived as I was in an exploratory mood. And I travelled to the Goblin Holdout, finding the Goblin Queen's den. However, I didn't want to enter there, so I kept following my wishing compasses, which led me to another opening, where I opened a chest. But then, when I went upstairs, I met the Goblin King, a man who wanted me to steal his fellow goblins' eggs. After that, I ended up randomly stumbling into the Mines of Devon again, which was quite lucky, as I wanted to mine even more redstone and make some redstone minions. I then found my way back to the Goblin Queen's castle, and this time I tried to enter, but her guards kicked me out before I could even get close. So I had to come up with another strategy if I wanted to enter. I again ran into the mines of Devon, so I mined even more redstone. Once I was finished mining redstone, however, I went back to the hub and grabbed some wood to make pickaxes out of for my redstone minions. With the wood, I crafted the pickaxes and then the minions, which I placed on my island. I then used my remaining redstone, and I bought some extra redstone from the bazaar to level up my minions to all tier 8. Now that I have some leveled minions, I decided to go visit my garden and farm some potatoes. A crop so great it started an entire in-game war. While farming potatoes, a viewer of my stream loaned me a Redstone 11 minion to help me speed up my collection, as it would be a lot slower with only Redstone 8s. With the Redstone 11 minion placed, I returned to my garden and continued farming a massive amount of potatoes. After farming some potatoes, I went on to farm some sugarcane for an ongoing farming contest, but I gave up after achieving bronze and moved on to farming wheat instead. Very shortly after beginning wheat though, I moved back to potatoes, but then I moved on to carrots for a little bit, and you may be wondering why carrots, and I genuinely have no idea. Well, when I finished farming, I decided to purchase a new plot of land, but yet again, because plot cleaning is so boring, I skipped it for you. Look at that monstrosity, that clean area. For my new plot, I wanted to paste some mushrooms, so I went to the mushroom cave and gathered some. For all times. Once I had gathered the mushrooms, I went to farming some carrots. Then I tried to farm some mushrooms, but my method wasn't the best, I'll be honest. I needed some rancher boots really to make it any better, but I couldn't get that at this point in time. So after that, I went on to farming some pumpkins to begin getting rancher boots. And that was it. One whole week of my life playing Hypixel Skyblock. Now, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to subscribe. If you want to see more of me, click up in the top left there to see another video from my channel that YouTube thinks you'll love.